Well known for his mild and open-hearted approach to interpreting the spirit of the Torah, comes a man who influenced Jewish history until his views finally superseded a competing house of study in the wake of the tragic Jewish rebellion against Rome that resulted in the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash in 70 CE. From about 80 CE until the 5th century of the Common Era, his disciples formed an intellectual dynasty that determined much of the character of Judaism to this day. So join me as we look at the life and teachings of Hillel the Elder. Born in Babylon and a descendant of the tribe of Benjamin, Hillel HaZaken lived in Jerusalem in the time of King Herod around the beginning of the Common Era and is one of the most important sages in rabbinic history. He was instrumental in the development of the Mishnah and the Talmud and the founder of Beit Hillel, that is the House of Hillel, a school of Tanim, that is a term that means those who repeat wise sayings, and captures an era of rabbis from approximately 10 to 220 CE, known as the Mishnaic period. Hillel's school became the primary academy of Torah learning prior to the destruction of the Second Temple. Please bear in mind that there were quite a few prominent figures throughout Jewish history possessing the same name as Hillel. The Hillel dealt with in this video is the same one who is dominant in the classic text of Jewish morality, that is Pirkei Avot, the chapter or ethics of the fathers. If you can get a hold of this book, do so. You will not regret it. But it's not a one-off read, it's something that you will read over and over and over again. One of Hillel's most famous sayings appears in the first chapter of Pirkei Avot and says, "If I am not for myself, who is for me? And being for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" Much of his teachings dealt with the balance of ethical reciprocity, and thus he is also the author of saying, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbour." Now this all sounds nice, and I did say that he was mild and open-hearted, but to everything there is balance. He also used to say, "One who makes his name great causes his name to be destroyed, and one who does not add to his knowledge causes it to cease, and one who does not study the Torah deserves death." One of the things I have noticed in the Messianic movement is there seems to be more of an emphasis in spotting Yeshua than studying and applying the Torah, which many confess is one and the same thing. Until this status quo changes, the movement will continue to be a dying institution, or will permanently be pushed into a fringe Christian movement. The anti-rabbinic stance of many of them is absolutely debilitating, and many of them are too blind to see that it is. It is said that Hillel's life paralleled that of Moshe Rabbeinu, in that at the age of 40, he went to the land of Israel, spending his time in deep study for the last third of his life, and he was the spiritual head of the Jewish people. Just like Moshe lived 120 years, Hillel also lived 120 years, and according to Kabbalah, he also possessed a spark of Moshe's transmigrated soul. Hillel was very poor, and he had exhausted all of his funds traveling to Israel, so he found work during the day, earning only 1 dinar, which 1/4 of gained him entrance into a yeshiva to study at night. His desire to learn Torah was so great that it exceeded his desire to eat. One Friday, he found no work. Unable to pay the entrance fee, he was denied admittance in the study hall, so he climbed onto the roof and he listened to the lecture through a skylight. It was the middle of winter and snow began to fall. Hillel remained on the roof all night and was buried in snow. The next morning, the head of the school realized that there was a figure blocking the sunlight. The students retrieved him from the roof, and even though it was the Sabbath, they lit a fire and warmed him. One day in the yeshiva, an important debate arose among them about the proper method of sacrificing the Pesach Pesach offering on Shabbat. Unable to resolve the issue and desperately needing a conclusive answer, the rabbis turned to Hillel. Using exacting logic and proofs, Hillel the elder settled the question that had stumped the greatest of minds. After such a display of Torah prowess, Hillel was appointed the leader of Jewry, a position he held for 40 years, approximately 100 years before the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. Hillel had the ability to learn the past and future associated with an object by simply looking at it. One such story in the Mishnah relates how he was walking by a river and saw a human skull floating on the top of the water. He recognized that it belonged to a murderer, so he turned to it and said, "Because you drowned others, you were drowned, and those who drowned you will also be drowned." There are three interesting aspects to this story. One, why does the Mishnah say one skull as opposed to a skull? And why did he speak to the skull? And why did he tell it that those who drowned you will also be drowned? Well, the story illustrates the concept of midah keneged midah. That is to say that Hashem deals with all men measure for measure. Despite the difficulty in observing Torah that many have in a secular world, one must still do so with a spirit of joy, because anyone who harms you will eventually be punished in the same manner. They will be punished even though you may not see their punishment in your lifetime. Hillel told the skull a law because according to Mishlei 17:5, the poor, referring to the dead bodies of the wicked, should not be mocked. And so identifying the skull as belonging to Paro, who according to many commentaries didn't die in the crushing waters of the Reed Sea crossing, but died later with his head floating for 1200 years in the sea. Hillel told the skull a law because according to Mishlei 17:5, the poor, referring to the dead bodies of the wicked, should not be mocked. And so identifying the skull as belonging to Paro tells him why he died and that his murderers will also not go unpunished. In doing this, Hillel allowed Paro's soul to finally move on. Beit Hillel existed at the same time of Beit Shammai. Shammai was a competing leading figure in Judaism during this time, with Hillel also known for teaching the spirit of the law, whereas Shammai was known for teaching the letter of the law. Interestingly, both schools often disagreed on halakhic rulings, but the Talmud says that they were always both right, meaning that a certain measure of both schools' emphasis on a given piece of halakha that was disagreed upon still carried some weight of truth. And also in the world to come, Shammai's teaching will carry even more weight. Hillel chiefly taught 80 students, each of whom became a great rabbi. 30 of them were so great that they were worthy to have the sun stand still for them, as it did with Joshua ben Nun. Another 30 were said to be worthy of prophetic vision on the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, and the final 20 were on an intermediate level. Included among his students were Rabban Yochanan ben Zaki and Yotanan ben Uziel. Hillel's tolerance and understanding personality was renowned. One Friday afternoon, as Hillel the elder was busily preparing for Shabbat, a man came to his door and demanded to speak with him. Hillel calmly dressed himself in proper attire and went to speak with his visitor to find out what was so urgent. The man related a question. Why are Babylonians' heads unusually round? This was actually a dig at the Babylonian-born Hillel, but without missing a beat, Hillel answered that the unusual shape of the heads was due to improper care by midwives. The man left, seemingly satisfied, but a few minutes later, he was back, once again with an all-important query. This time he wanted to know about the squinted eyes of the residents of Tadmor. Hillel answered him and he left. This cycle repeated itself again, with a man asking another unusual question about the wide feet ascribed to the people of Africa. After the third question, and another even-keeled response from Hillel, the man actually became quite upset. He told Hillel that he had bet his friend 400 zuz that he could get Hillel the elder upset. Now he would lose 400 zuz. Hillel smiled and said, "Better you lose 400 zuz than I get upset." Beyond his masterful self-control, Hillel was also exceptionally holy. A heavenly voice once pronounced that Hillel the elder had merited to have been a prophet. However, the shortcomings of his generation prevented that from happening. Hillel passed away around the year 8 CE. At his funeral, he was eulogized as a pious, humble, and righteous man, and student of Ezra the scribe. Hillel began an illustrious line of descendants, including Rabban Shimon ben Gamaliel and Judah the Prince, author of the Mishnah. His teachings and lessons have become ingrained in Jewish culture, making a permanent mark on the ethos of Judaism today. Thank you again so much for watching, and bye for now. Hey there, before you go, if YouTube normally isn't your thing, you can check out the content of this channel also on Rumble, a new video platform for the more conservative viewer. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.